Hello and welcome to this brand new Blender Smoothie tutorial. My name is Ben Amond, and today we're going to be continuing the tutorial series that we started last week, which is on creating a very delicious looking pizza in Blender, or at least hopefully delicious looking is the goal. So when we left off, we had just finished creating the textures, or compiling the textures, piecing them together into one image. And we created a very basic pizza mesh. I'm going to kind of move that up so it's just sitting on top of the grid there. Yeah, so this is where we left off. And the next thing we're going to do is, of course, UV map this thing. Start mapping the textures to it and then working a little bit on texture painting. So, yeah, let's get started on that. First thing we want to do is hop into edit mode, and we need to add a seam or two. So I'm just going to start probably 2 seams, because I'm thinking we'll probably put one around this area so that we can separate the main part of the pizza from the crust, and then probably one on the underside here so we can separate the bottom of the pizza from the crust. And I realized that I do not currently have a texture for the bottom of the pizza. It's because for simplicity's sake, in this case, we're really just going to make it pretty much a solid color with a little bit of color variation, just because you don't really see the bottom of the pizza. But you should be able to apply what we do for the top of the pizza to another texture for the bottom of the pizza if you're interested in doing that on your own time. Yeah, so I'm going to I think I'll put a texture seam right here, because that's, we might want to kind of move, turn off proportional editing there. Might want to kind of move that up a little bit, just so it's a little more gradual there. But I think I am going to add a seam probably right there. Now, is that good enough? It's probably good enough. I'm actually going to move that up a little bit more too. Something like that. And yeah, that's probably a good enough spot to put it. So I'm just going to select that again by holding down Alt and right-clicking that to select the edge loop. And I'm just going to press Control-E and go ahead and click Mark Seam. And I just realized I need to turn these on again. Sorry about that. Okay. So basically, I'm guessing you're probably already somewhat familiar with UV mapping, but what we're doing here is just creating an area that basically it's a seam, which means that these will be 2 separate pieces. So this inside section will be a separate piece that we're going to map to the image, and then the rest of this is going to be a separate piece. So we want to do the same thing, like I said, with the bottom of the pizza. So I'm probably just going to use, I think I'll use this one right here. We'll select that, again, Alt, right-click, and I'm going to press Control-E, Mark Seam. Okay. So we've got 2 seams now. Actually, we are going to want to put in one more. I just realized, just to keep this from being a continuous ring, since the crust textures that we have, and if you remember, we can open this up here, find the image really quickly. Pizza textures, it's somewhere in here. Named it Final Pizza Texture. And I'm just going to click that thumbtack icon. Basically that pins the image so it doesn't disappear like it has the tendency to do sometimes when you switch between modes. But yeah, in case you don't remember, you can see that we have, of course, the pizza texture, the crust texture, stretching across as one long continuous breadstick-like thing. And so we want to make this part of the crust on the mesh match that. So basically, if we were to unwrap this right now, we would have a ring, because there's no seam separating it down the middle. So we basically just want to pick a spot anywhere on the mesh, really. Just something like this, like I just selected it vertex by vertex, right-clicking, shift right-clicking, like that, oops, all the way down. And we just want to find something like that, and then press Control-E, Mark Seam. And that way, when it unwraps it, then it's going to unwrap it into a long section like this, instead of a ring. And that's exactly what we're looking for. Oops. So at this point, that's pretty much all we need to do as far as that goes. So that now we can start actually mapping it. So I'm just going to press A to select everything, U to unwrap. I'm just going to choose unwrap, and we'll see what happens. It looks kind of like a really creepy smiley face. So yeah, we just want to kind of work with these a little bit. And if you're having difficulty sort of trying to figure out, well, which part's the top, which part's the bottom, first of all, you can tell just by looking at them, this one here on the left is the bottom, because we have fewer edge loops in the bottom. But if you're ever trying to figure out maybe on a larger, more complicated mesh, then you can just select parts of it, of course, in the 3D viewport, and they'll show up here. So this is the top part, and we want to position that on the top part of the pizza. And again, this is all approximate. I'm going to switch to Blender render for this part, just because we can view it in textured view like that. Whereas if we're using cycles, then we have to set up the nodes and everything like that. We don't want to do that yet, because this is all preliminary. So we're just kind of moving this around, and it can overlap a little bit. It can do whatever, because we're going to be using the texture paint tools in Blender to kind of clean it up a bit. So now we've got something like that. Looks pretty good. Kind of weird, but that's the idea. And then we can start working on the crust part. And again, I'm holding down Alt right click and then Alt Shift right click to select multiple edge loops. And yeah, it looks like we've got something like that. It's kind of unfortunate that it's in a curved shape, which means we're probably going to have to straighten this out manually, which is a real pain, but sometimes it's what you got to do. So I'm just going to select one edge loop there, and I'm going to turn on proportional editing to see if that can help us out a little bit, maybe. Kind of rotate parts of it. It's not working out too well. It's kind of disappointing. Yeah, it's really not working. I'm going to undo that. All right, so it looks like we are probably going to have to do all this manually. Maybe. Let me try this. I'm going to select this edge loop right in here, the inner edge loop. I don't know, well, you can see it. Maybe if I zoom in. That's not helping. They're not getting any bigger. But just this outside edge loop right here. And I'm going to press S for scale, X to do it along the x-axis, 0. And apparently I meant to do the y-axis instead. So S, Y, 0. We'll try that. There we go. So that's nice and flat now. Obviously it's not perfectly flat, but maybe this will help us work with it a little bit more. So I'm going to do that with all of these. I'm just going to Alt right-click that, S, Y, 0, Enter. Do that again with these other ones, S, Y, 0, S, Y, 0, and S, Y, 0. And that's a lot better. So now we've still got kind of a weird curving pattern on the outside of this, so I'm just going to go down and do SX0 for all of these. And I know it's kind of boring to have to go through and do this to all of them, but sometimes the unwrap tools do this. It's kind of annoying. But it shouldn't take too long to get through all of these. So I'm just, as you can see over there, I'm kind of selecting them. Again, that's Alt right-click. My dog is barking. It's kind of annoying. Just ignore that for now. I hope he stops soon. Anyway, so SX0, 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 and we just want to do this all the way across. We're about halfway there. Kind of get into this pattern after a little while. That makes it a little easier to go through it really quickly. And we're almost done. SX0, SX0. It should be pretty easy to position these then once we're done. So close. Oops, already did that one. And there we go. That's sort of good. It looks like they're kind of more spaced apart in the center than they are around the edges, and that's kind of weird. There might actually be a way to fix that through proportional editing. I'm going to try that. I'm going to enable that, and I'm going to try a constant fall off just to see how this works. Yeah, it doesn't work too well with that. So let's try a smooth fall off just to see how that works, because maybe we can sort of bunch those together a little bit. Just like that, and then maybe move some of these out a little bit more. Sort of like that. So we're just trying to get these a little more evenly spaced. Yeah, like that. Just about done. And that's probably good enough for now. We might have to tweak it a little bit more later. So, for the rest of this, I'm going to move this out. And yeah, at this point, it's really just scaling it out along the x-axis and kind of working with it that way. And then you've got to go in and, yeah, you've pretty much just got to sort of turn off proportional editing. Adjust it along, whoa, didn't select all those there. along the y-axis. Just, looks like it's not picking this up. It's kind of annoying. There we go. Now we can see it. Alright, that looks really weird. But, like I said before, we'll typically, maybe if we can, I'm gonna undo those, because it looks like we've got a bit of texture stretching, and we want to make sure that we get that out of the way before we do anything else. So I'm just gonna open that up. Ooh, yeah, it's really messy. Yeah, that's pretty weird. Okay. So basically, when you get texture stretching like that, you kind of want to position these edge loops in about, you want to space them apart at approximately the same length that they're apart in the mesh. So, as you can see, the gaps aren't very consistent. Like, you can see that the gap between, you probably can't see because it's really hard to see, but the gap between these two edge loops and these two edge loops, these two edge loops should be about the same. Those two, actually. But it looks like for some reason, this one in the middle is kind of weird. Maybe if I can, we want to make sure we have all that selected. So basically, yeah, we just want to make sure that these are spaced apart at about the same level they are in the viewport. And as you can see, when I'm scaling this out, if you can see over sort of in the left-hand area, it is sort of affecting that texture stretching. Kind of helping with it. Does look a lot better. Though it still looks like there are... Maybe if we can... Oh, that's why. It's part of why, too, is because I scaled it in a little too far along the y-axis. So if we can scale that out a little bit more, yeah. And that's looking a lot better. You have to be really careful when you're working with texture stretching or trying to fix it, and you should try to fix it, because it's often one of the biggest giveaways that the food that you're creating isn't real. It makes it look less appetizing, even if it's only on a subconscious level. Texture stretching it's probably one of the #1 reasons why something looks CG. So you really want to try and fix that as much as you can. It looks like there's a little bit over on the sides here, but I'm not going to worry too much about that because that's over on the edge, and we're going to be painting over that. So now we can sort of go in and start positioning parts of these. Doesn't have to be exact, again, because we are doing the texture painting. So we can just sort of align these. That's aligned pretty well. That's aligned pretty well. That's aligned pretty well. And just kind of work through it like that. It's pretty simple. Just go all the way down the crust texture like that. And if you notice any more texture stretching, go through and fix that now. It's always a good idea to try to fix that before you start moving around these mesh parts like this, because it's a lot harder to fix once we've sort of matched all of this up, just because it's not all along the same axis anymore. So we want to keep working with that, and we're getting somewhere. Still doesn't look very appetizing, but that is to be expected. So we'll keep working with this. Looks like it's kind of bunching up a lot of this stuff at the top. If I look over on the left side again, but we'll take a look at that once we're done with this. Like I reposition. No, it's right. Okay. Whoops. Got to be almost done with this. Yeah, we are. Okay. Just want to keep working at that, and we're almost there. Oops. And that's really close. Okay, that's good enough. Alright, so that looks pretty good. We've got a little bit of texture stretching in here, but when it's just one kind of localized area like that, it's probably better to just fix that in texture painting and not worry about manipulating the entire texture. So, yeah, that looks pretty bad, but once we start on the texture painting, it'll look much, much better. Let me really quickly kind of try to get something for the bottom here, just so we can get that out of the way. We've got a lot of blank space up here around on top of the pepperoni spots, so I'm just going to switch this to paint and press N to pull up. We'll pull it up on that side. I was kind of expecting it on the other side. It's still not showing up. Maybe I can... Ah, it was T, not N. Toolbar. Got it. Okay. So we just want to sort of use the eyedropper tool and maybe grab one of the colors towards the bottom of the pizza there, something like that. And just sort of, yeah, we don't need it that bright. Just something like that. And then we can kind of raise that radius, and basically we can just sort of paint a little area right up here maybe. Something that might be a little too dark. Maybe we can make it a little brighter. Something a little more like that maybe. That's better. Again, it doesn't have to be exact because we're not really going to be seeing the bottom side of the pizza. So we could just take that and bump the microphone stand. Go back to view. Press T to get rid of that. And, whoa, I accidentally selected all the layers there. Yeah, and really quickly, a quick tip to sort of select all of this so we don't have to hover over it and press Alt and right mouse button and whatnot. We can just select that center vertex at the bottom and press Control plus twice. And that just expands our selection out. And we can see it over here. We can sort of move that over, kind of scale that in, something like that. There we go. Doesn't have to be exact in scale or anything like that because it's just a solid color. And that looks pretty good. We might go back and add something to the bottom there later, but I think it'll probably be fine. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, the first thing I notice is that it looks like the center, our pizza in the center is for some reason kind of darker than the pizza on the outside, which is kind of weird. So, you know, I think I might actually bring this back into Photoshop at some point and kind of fix that up. And we probably want to take care of that now before we go any farther. So I'm going to save this. How much time? Got 16 minutes going. Okay. So I'm just going to open Photoshop really quickly. You can open GIMP or whatever other program you're using. Again, it's all we're doing is sort of adding a bit more brightness to one part. So I'm just going to open, it should be under recent. Apparently not. It's weird. Okay, I'll open. We'll open, you know, I'm just so that we don't have to do something weird and add. Well, you know, this will work. We'll just open this. We'll do this the quick and easy way, where I'm just going to duplicate this layer, and on this background layer I'm going to adjust the brightness, contrast. It should be under adjustments, brightness, contrast. Sort of bump up the brightness, not too much because we don't want to overexpose this thing. Maybe decrease the contrast a little bit. Just something like that. That looks pretty good. And we'll click OK, and then we'll bring this back, and I am just going to erase, after I make this a little bit bigger, more like that, and then I'm just going to sort of erase this, just like that, and that looks pretty good. That looks a lot brighter, a lot better. It's going to fit in a lot easier with the rest of the pizza textures. Okay. And it looks like, yeah, of course it maintained the colors of all the rest. Okay, so that's good. And then we can go into layer and merge down just to combine them all into one. And that's pretty good. So we can go ahead and save this again. Oh, it looks like... Oh, yeah, I forgot to save it in Blender to add the additional brown color. Doesn't matter. We'll just add it again. So I'm just going to save over that really quickly. It's probably going to take a while to save. It's a pretty big image. In the meantime, let's... yeah, I should have saved that. But that's fine. It's just one solid color. Still got some weird texture stretching going on over here. I'm going to kind of fix that up in just a little bit. Should be done. Yeah, it looks like it is. Okay, so we can go ahead and close that and open it again, maybe. Looks like it didn't. Try that again. Final pizza texture. There we go. All right, and really quickly, I guess we'll just go switch back to paint there, open up T, go back up into tools, and kind of paint over that again, just that little area. All right, and before I forget, then we'll want to save that, because we'll be saving this regularly, of course, since we're going to be working with the texture painting. All right, so that should still work. Yeah, and it looks like it is. I guess it's kind of overlapping a little bit there. We'll move that. Okay. There we go. It had to update. That looks a lot better. Still looks maybe a little dark. I don't know. I think it's fine. It's much better. Blends in a lot easier. Okay, so now we come to the interesting part, the texture painting. Now, I'm going to combine these two windows. All right. So basically, it's pretty simple. What we're going to be doing is we're mostly going to be using the clone stamp tool, or the clone brush, of course. just to sort of smooth out these texture seams and kind of make it one continuous texture. And so basically the way it works in Blender, the way Blender's texture painting works with that clone brush, is you sort of have your cursor, your 3D cursor positioned in a certain spot, and it will draw image data from wherever your cursor is, or wherever your cursor is in relation to you. So right now, if I were to have the view like this, you can see the cursor's right there, and I were to start texture painting somewhere using the clone brush, it would take the image portion of this section the cursor is over. But when I move the view, then it adjusts the image. So it's not really on where the cursor is located, it's really more on where the cursor is located in relation to the view. So keep that in mind while you're working on the texture painting. And yeah, that's pretty much all we have to do there, so we can just switch to texture paint and switch to the clone tool, and we can get started. So we do want to be working with strength of 100%, just because we have to in order to cover up these texture seams. Otherwise, it's not going to work out so well. It's still kind of dark. It's pretty weird. We'll just work with it for now, though. So we do want to lower the radius. Something to keep in mind is the larger the radius of the brush is, the slower the tool is going to be to respond. So you might want to keep it kind of low to begin with. And yeah, at this point, we're probably going to start out just in top view to kind of cover up these texture seams and the edges. You'll be switching a lot between object mode and texture paint mode, so I had to switch back to object mode just so I can sort of, come over here, and maybe we'll start up in this area, kind of get this spot right here going. Go back into texture paint and start painting. Alright, and at this point, once you have a spot chosen like that, you can pretty much just go all the way around like this. And then, of course, like we did before while we were working with the crust textures, is we want to remove any repeating patterns. Whoa. That was kind of weird. Okay. And yeah, we can work with that probably a little bit more, maybe with a little less strength, something like 0.5, maybe 0.6 to bring that up a little bit. And then we can sort of, maybe paint some of this stuff there. Just something like that to sort of cover up some of those spots a little more. And that's a really strong repeating texture. So again, we just want to sort of switch between these two modes. Maybe get something down there and go back into texture paint and use that to sort of cover up some of those repeating patterns. Because again, you do not want these repeating patterns. They're not good. Maybe bring up the strength even more. Ooh, some of that a bit. So that's pretty good. All right. And yeah, it's pretty obvious when you can see these repeating patterns. So you've just got to switch back and forth between object mode and texture paint mode until you get something that you're happy with. So maybe we'll use a little bit more of that right there, because that looks pretty good. Did I just? No, I think that's good. Okay. And keep working on different parts of these until, yeah, switch back into object mode, maybe find another spot like up there. Back into texture paint, maybe sort of use that there instead, and that'll work. So you just want to keep doing this until you've got something that you're happy with, until you've gotten rid of a lot of the offending patterns. That's looking pretty good. Back into object mode, we've still got a lot over here that it looks like we kind of need to work on. Go back into texture paint mode then and maybe cover those up a bit. Yeah, that's good. And go back into object mode again, maybe select something right there. It'll probably work just to cover up this portion. Yeah, and that looks pretty good. All right. Yeah, it looks like we've got a little bit more over there. I'm going to wrap this up soon just because this is just for the tutorial, so you can sort of get the idea of how to do it. I don't want to spend too much time working on it, trying to perfect it. Okay, Okay. I think that'll work. It's probably good enough. So now we've got a relatively continuous spot. Ooh, looks kind of ugly right in here. I think I'm going to change some of that. Yeah, let me go back into object mode, and maybe we'll get cursor right there and kind of lower the strength a little bit, maybe, to sort of, you know, I'm going to increase the radius too, just so we can get a little bit of a better, maybe a smoother transition in all of this, because that looks really bad. Now why is the cursor, it looks like the cursor is staying and it's not moving relative to my view. It's kind of weird. Anyway, I think that'll work. That's pretty good. Then the next thing, of course, that we want to do is start covering up this spot right here, especially since we've got some weird blurry textures that are kind of working their way through that. So I just switched back to orthographic view. Yeah, so maybe we can grab something from over there and kind of go into texture paint mode. Whoops, we want to be working with, again, 100% strength when we are doing covering texture seams. Maybe we'll come over to get that a little bit more. Kind of, whoops, we can lower the strength now that the seam itself is covered. You know, it looks like there's too much cheese down there. I want to kind of get that, maybe cover that up a bit. And you do want to cover that up completely, because it'd be weird to see partial cheese parts down there. It just doesn't work. But anyway, let me fix up this spot right here too, because there's a bit of texture stretching there. So we just want to sort of go in there. Oops, it's really bright. All right, maybe we'll try a darker spot like that. That's good. All right, so that'll work. Got rid of some of that. Okay, so it's good for all the top parts there. Again, we've got a bit of texture stretching there. Let me just fix that really quickly. I know I'm being kind of nitpicky about this, but you do want to eliminate as much of this texture stretching as you possibly can, because it is really bad for the render. Go in with a little bit more, something like that, and that's good enough. Alright, so we probably do want to take care of this really quickly. I'll just go with 100% strength, and I'm just going to sort of paint around all that. This doesn't have to be precise. Whoa, getting some weird stuff there. It's kind of strange. Okay. Make sure you don't like go over the edge or anything, because if you get it up the sides, then that's going to be really inconvenient. Oops. Just want to go all the way around like that until there. It's pretty much completed. Okay, that's good enough. Yeah, really. Okay. So that's a smooth enough transition. We've pretty much worked out all the texture seams then. So before we go any farther, very first thing we want to do is split the view again, go to the UV image editor, open up that final pizza texture. I think that's the wrong one. Yeah, looks like it. That's the right one. You can see the evidence of our texture painting there, and you want to save that image. Because the thing is, of course, with Blender, saving the file isn't enough. You have to actually save the image separately. And you want to make sure that you take care of that, of course, before you close, because then you'll lose all of your progress, and that would be really bad. Okay, so now we've got some... What in the world is going on there? It's really weird. Anyway, so we've pretty much got that all worked out. It looks good, it looks seamless. Yeah, so that'll work. Basically, the next thing that we want to do is work on the pepperoni. And I think that's the last thing we're going to do. I want to see how much time we have left. About half an hour in. Don't want to take too long on this then. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and take care of that really quickly. So I am going to add a circle. And we are probably going to give this a subsurf modifier, so I'm going to lower that to like 16. Oops. Move that over. And I should have filled it while we had that chance, but we didn't, so I'm going to go into edit mode and extrude it. And I'm going to press Alt-M to merge it at the center. And I'm going to leave... Now we'll stay in textured view for now. I'm going to go back into edit mode and extrude that along the z-axis to give it a little bit of thickness. You know, we probably don't have to do that, actually. Instead of doing that, let's just give it a solidify modifier. Go back there. We find it right there. Okay, so we just want to give it a little bit of thickness, not too much, probably a little more than that, maybe like 0.02. That's probably a good value, maybe 0.025. Then I'm going to add a subsurf modifier, smooth that out, something like that. And maybe I'll add 2. And then you probably do want to add, oops, whoa, an edge loop there to sort of sharpen that. That's good. Okay, so there's our pepperoni. Maybe I will make it a little thinner just because we are going to be adding some translucency in the shader and everything. So I'm going to go back into textured view, and I'm going to select this and just press U, and I'm just going to project it from view. That's the most efficient way to do it. Obviously there would be like a tiny bit of texture stretching on the sides, but that really doesn't matter. And there's one piece of pepperoni. Again, we can do what we did with the pizza and turn on proportional editing by pressing O, and then select random parts of these and kind of push and pull them around a little bit, which is something that we should probably do, just because pepperoni couldn't be perfectly round, especially after being cooked. Then it sometimes kind of shrivels up a little bit. So we want to make sure we get that. And maybe give it a little variety along the z-axis too. Kind of adjust some of those parts there. So that's pretty good. And then we just want to duplicate that. And then maybe do a couple more tweaks on that. Maybe move that up, kind of adjust that. Sort of flip all those around a little bit. Push, pull some of these areas. And it's just stuff like that. And then just to add a little more variety, since we do have 2 pepperoni textures, I'm just going to go into edit mode and unwrap, project from view, and we will map this to the other piece of pepperoni. And that's pretty much it for the pepperoni. We can kind of duplicate these, and we want to scale them down because those are pretty big for pieces of pepperoni right now. Maybe something like, that's probably too small. Make them a little bit bigger than that. Something like that, maybe. Depends on the size of the pizza, too. And then you just want to go around and sort of position them in different parts and kind of rotate them accordingly. Just want to make sure that you don't get any cheese on top. I know that sometimes there is cheese on top of pepperoni. Not often, typically. I guess it depends on the pizza. But you do want to avoid that because it looks very, very fake. Then you can sort of rotate these in different directions and just kind of position them. That looks really, really terribly positioned. But yeah, you just want to sort of move those around. Maybe get one in the center there and move that over. Kind of adjust that. Yeah, something like that. There we go. Maybe rotate these along the z-axis too. Anyway, that's a really, really terrible collection of pepperoni. It's not assembled very well. But you get the idea. You just want to sort of move them around, make sure you don't get any of the cheese overlapping. And you should be good to go. So you can duplicate that one more time maybe, just for the sake of this tutorial. And that's pretty much it as far as texturing goes. We might go back and maybe paint a little bit of red under the pepperoni to make it look like there's, like, I don't know, kind of grease from the meat pooling underneath it or something. But we'll work on that a little bit more in the shaders portion of this tutorial series. That's good enough for now. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Make sure that image is saved. Looks like it was, but that's pretty much it. So that's the end of this second part of the tutorial series. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it, and I look forward to seeing you in the last tutorial where we will work on the shading and maybe a bit of lighting. So thanks for watching.